Well, hello. Welcome to another Hiring for Good podcast. And as you know, Hiring for Good is a podcast on leadership. And invite our trusted advisors to be part of our Hiring for Good podcast. And today, I am so fortunate to have Bob Bedritis with us. I'm going to read you Bob's bio, and I can't wait for you to hear about his journey. But Bob, welcome first and foremost.
Hi, thank you, Suzanne. It's such a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. So Bob is the founder and managing director of Oswego Private Wealth Management. He is known for helping business owners become financially independent of their businesses, often without selling or giving up control. As a certified exit planner, Bob believes that a business owner deserves to maximize the value of their life's work. His exclusive blueprint stress test uncovers and systematically closes those gaps that could threaten a business and personal financial plan. Although trained as a wealth manager and an exit planner, Bob believes that his real work is in protecting and maximizing the dreams of the most productive people on the planet, the American entrepreneur. Bob previously worked in senior roles with Payne Weber, UBS, and Merrill Lynch before launching his own entrepreneurial career. When not leading his team during the week, Bob enjoys a life with his wife, Michelle, spending time with his kids and grandkids. And on weekends, you can find him on the tennis or squash course and occasionally struggling on the golf course. So once again, Bob, welcome. And I am really excited for everyone to hear about you and your journey because you have had such a fascinating background and journey. So I'm going to be quiet, turn it over to you, and share with us how you got to where you are today.
Well, thank you, Suzanne. Well, my journey needs to start with family. So my mother and father were from Riga, Latvia. And when World War II broke out, my father, all of 16 years old, throws a rifle over his shoulder and fights Soviet aggression throughout the war. Post the war, when the Allies came in, my mother, my father, and my mother's parents my grandparents on my mother's side were lucky enough to get out before the Soviets took full control. The rest of my family did not. So they were moved to a displaced persons camp in Munich, Germany, where my parents met and they married. And they had their papers. They were ready to go to Australia when at the 11th hour, the First Baptist Church of Cleveland, Ohio, sponsored them on a humanitarian mission and brought them to America for a life of freedom. These young 20-year-olds, 20-some-year-olds, 21, 22-year-olds, here they go. And so, as you can probably imagine, a man whose education is stopped at age 16 probably wasn't qualified to become a doctor or lawyer or a CEO of a company. So my dad started working in a factory, in a warehouse for a company in Cleveland, Ohio. And lo and behold, he's a smart guy. And he went to school at night, got his education, got his degrees, worked his way up within the company and had a 30-year career and became an executive vice president and the general manager in Columbus, Ohio, where I predominantly grew up. So I go off to college, Miami University, and when I come home one break, my father tells me that his company got bought out by a larger concern, and they said, Edgar, thanks, 30 fun years, you have 2 weeks and you're gone. And here's my dad, he's 52 years old. He's only worked for one company his entire life, and he didn't even blink. I'm astonished when I think about it as being a little bit older, how my dad, who had to leave his family behind because of a war, try to figure out how to do some things with another language in Germany, and then come to America, and everything thrown at him didn't faze him. He very quickly he regrouped and he started his own company, and my father became an entrepreneur. Buckeye Business Associates Inc. They brokered bars, restaurants. They were in the restaurant business, and they were basically a brokerage firm for restaurants and bars. And so, and he ran that business for 10 wonderful years and retired. And that was that. However, when he retired, he simply shut down the business. He didn't monetize the business. He didn't have a succession plan. He didn't do the kinds of things that I do now. And I just can't help thinking, had he had somebody like me back in those days, it would have been different financially. Although he did fine, lived a great life. He just died just a few years ago at the age of 92, and
Wow.
he had a wonderful, wonderful life. And my mother, uh, at 89, passed away. And my mother, interestingly enough, was also an entrepreneur. I didn't understand it at the time, but as soon as her feet hit American soil, she became an Avon lady. And when she died, the year before she died, she was recognized as one of the leading Avon ladies with 60 years of tenure. So it was wonderful.
That is incredible. I don't know if you know this, but both my parents also, well, my mother was Swedish and was a young teenager during World War II. And it's amazing how that in itself shapes not just how they are, but also how you are as their offspring. And
Oh, no,
it
no question about it. No question about it. So what I did, so what I learned family meant everything, but my parents were, and this is this might be a triggering word for some people in this world today, but I say they were patriots. And what I mean by that is they loved America. They came out of a communist system and they loved the freedoms, and they just had such joy in being Americans. So I was raised with that basic paradigm that you love your country, you love your family, family's everything. Matter of fact, I grew up in such an ethnic household. English is my second language. I didn't learn English till I went to first grade. We were Latvian speakers that whole time. And so what did I do? I wanted to use I wanted to figure out, how do I become this first generation American? So I used two things. I used sports and I used education as my way to make it in this world. And I went to Miami University. Got very, very lucky to get into financial services and got with some terrific companies, Merrill Lynch, Payne Weber, and then it became UBS through the buyout. And I sort of rode the chairs. I went from a broker to a branch manager in the early 90s. I was the West Coast divisional out of San Francisco for Payne Weber. Went to New York, became national sales manager. Then ultimately, I ran the wealth management group for Payne Weber and for UBS out of New York until about 2001. And I had four young kids. I was killing myself. I was on the 5:15 train, and I lived in New Jersey, took the train into Manhattan. I was always on airplanes. I was rarely home because I could be there before the kids woke up, and I was lucky to get home in time for the kids to tuck them in. And so I said I needed to make a change. So of course, I did nothing. This comes into your world a little bit, Suzanne, because of course I did nothing. I just got depressed that I was working too hard and I was never home, but the job was fulfilling. But out of the blue, a friend of mine was offered a role in, as he said it to me when he called me, Portland, Oregon. and he said, Bob, I think you might be interested. This sounds like a good role for you. And so anyway, long story tolerable, I took the role. I moved to Portland. I loved it because I spent a lot of time up here in my San Francisco days when I was the divisional, and I loved it. And I made the move. Probably not fully understanding what I was getting into. And I made the move to come out here to be CEO of this fourth largest privately held company in the state of Oregon. And it was really not a good fit. It was really a bad fit. I probably interviewed better than I should have, because I really wasn't fit for the role, because it was a very actuarial engineering kind of a company role, financial services, but it was an operations role. And I'm not an operations guy. I was a distribution guy, a sales leader, sales manager. And so they got kind of tired of me after about a year and decided it was time for them to fire me. And so I followed in my dad's footsteps, and I retired for 3 years, and in my young 40s, younger than my dad, and then finally said I really should be doing something. I'm too young and I have too much passion for things. So I started my first company, Paradigm Capital Group, and we did consulting for hedge funds, private equity firms, some banks, and some insurance companies. And after 13 years, I felt that I was still, once again, I fell into the same trap, always on airplanes, Boston, Austin, Chicago, New York, LA, San Francisco. And I started just a decade ago, while we're filming this right now, taping this right now, It's exactly a decade since I started Oswego Private Wealth Management. And I will just give you two quick stories on that, and then I'll quit monologuing. Story number one is 16 months after I started this company. You had mentioned I play squash and tennis. I took a squash racket into my right eye, and which created a detached retina, which would not reattach for over a year properly. I ended up having 9 surgeries for my eye. And if anyone's ever had a detached retina, they know that they put this permeable gas into your eye and then require you to lie face down 16 hours a day. So the 8 hours you're sleeping, that's great, but you've got to find 8 waking hours to be face down. Then while I'm going through all of that, I'm diagnosed with cancer. And then my cancer, the one and only cancer surgery created a blood clot in my lungs that almost killed me. As a matter of fact, when I spent Christmas of that year up on the hill at OHSU, and the doctor said, yeah, 25% of the time, the first sign of this pulmonary embolism is death. And you have about a 30% chance of dying this week in the hospital. Merry Christmas. And anyway, while I went through all of that, I had tons and tons and tons of time to reflect. And while I was reflecting, I had a wealth management business that was just starting, and I didn't know if I was going to live or die. I didn't know what the future held for me or anything, let alone my business. And I thought about, well, if I do get through this, what do I want my life to look like? What do I want my business to look like? And I reflected back on my father's journey, even my mother's journey, doing sales and taking inventory, my journey being a corporate guy, but then ultimately realizing that I always should have been an entrepreneur from day one, honestly. And I said, that's it. I burned the ships. Any clients that I had that were not business owners, I transferred to another financial advisor that I know and trust, would let them manage my own money. And I only kept the entrepreneurial business owner, my one and only client. And that's why I have such passion, because as you had mentioned, I believe they deserve to lead lives of amazing significance, taking care of the people they love, the causes that they care about, and making a difference in the world. And most of us, as Emerson said, lead lives of quiet desperation. Or was it Thoreau? I don't remember now. But the most men and women lead lives of quiet desperation. And I don't believe that has to be so. I believe that, as you said, the most productive people on planet Earth deserve not only to maximize the value of their business, but they deserve to lead an amazing life of significance. And that's the process we do with our Blueprint stress test. That's what I'm passionate about. And that's why we're going strong, helping family businesses, privately held businesses. And oh, by the way, we're a family business. My son, Eric, my daughter, Kim are a part of the business, and we have fun every day.
Well, and it's interesting for me to hear this journey. And I've always said we learn more with our straight knees than we do when we win a gold medal. And our next question is always about formative experiences, things that have changed you. And a lot of times they're from external people or a situation. Yours is definitely an internal who you are. And again, being able to have that opportunity to prioritize, even though it was a horrible situation, you've learned from that. What other formative periods that you can share with us that really shaped who you are? And again, I think we said it at the very beginning, it starts with family. It's
Mhm.
how we are raised and how um you know how that drives us. But bosses and or when you were a boss, share a time that either somebody helped you or you helped.
Oh, sure. Oh, absolutely. That's fantastic. Well, first of all, I kind of look at my life as a 3-act play. The first act was preparation, getting ready, getting educated, learning things. The second act was sort of that middle period where you just sort of go to work, make money, my Wall Street days, if you will. And the third act is the act I'm in now. And I can actually answer this question in all 3 acts. But if you think about any play you've ever seen, the first act introduces the characters, the second act introduces the conflict, and the third act resolves it all. And so the third act should be the most exciting of all, and it is for me. So my first act as a kid, very influenced by teachers and by sports and by family and my Latvian culture. And so some of my greatest learnings were from coaches. I had some amazing coaches. I played hockey, I played basketball, played tennis. Those are my three sports that I played. And I had just amazing coaches throughout those years. And that meant so much to me. When I shoot into the business world, I had both mentors that I wanted to emulate, and I had mentors that do I couldn't do enough to not want to be like them. And so during my one of those companies, I won't name it, but I happened to have probably the gruffest, roughest, meanest boss for 8.5 years. I was his number two for those 8.5 years, and he had an IQ off the charts. You know, Columbia undergrad, Harvard Business School. He woke up every morning just wanting to see who he could destroy that morning. And since I was so close in his orbit, I could see so much about what he was doing. But he taught me something. When I was in business school, I learned something about the prof was named McGregor, and he had what he called the theory X and theory Y. And theory X assumes that your employees are all lazy imbeciles, and that you better have high command and control over them, and make sure they always know who's in charge and micromanage every moment of their lives. And the theory Y believes that you have confident, competent, self-motivated people to work for. And working those 8.5 years for a theory X guy, I went way out into the other direction of theory Y, of hiring and trusting people. And of course, and you know what? 90% of the time, it is wonderful and it pays, and people thrive and are passionate in those roles. However, it all comes down to what you do. It is making sure you have the right hire, the right fit. Because if you do find somebody who is lazy, doesn't care, is unmotivated, then if you have a boss like I was, which is a theory Y boss, boy, could you take advantage of me for a long, long time. So.
You know, that is so funny, Bob, because I've always said I'm the worst manager there is, and therefore I only hire people who don't need managing. Because yes, I am definitely a why person also.
Yeah, I believe I'm a good leader. I do, and I've had that feedback. I do believe I'm a good leader, if that's not too immodest. And I love leading the team and leading things. I want to be a leader of my client. I don't just want to be an advisor to my clients. I want to show leadership for them, to bring them in areas of that amazing life of significance that they didn't even think was possible. But then it's easy when I had decades of raising my children. I already know what I got. And I've got great, confident, super, super talented kids. They're not kids. They're in their 30s.
Yeah.
But it's just, the trust is just obviously already there.
Well, and you mentioned trust a couple of times. And I think a good leader understands those values that drive them, but they also know how to operationalize those values.
Oh,
So talk to me about what is important and how have you operationalized those?
oh, thanks for asking that. Well, I believe that there are four key systems that every business has to have. And we've done a lot of work with EOS and some other coaches, and we brought in people because we think there are a lot of people a lot smarter than us than creating those things. So we think that there has to be a good structure, a good system, which is why we have this, our exclusive blueprint stress test. It's a systematized way of doing business. We all know as a team, when we meet one of our potential, a new client, a potential client in the first meeting, we know exactly what we're doing, how the path we're taking them down, every step of the way, all the way to having a great relationship and servicing them. So we've invested heavily into computer systems, investment systems, CRMs, because our business is systematized. So we think there's a structural capital every business should have. We also think that there's a customer or client capital, which is a cultural capital. We believe we have to have a great culture, that we want our clients to feel they're part of our family, we're a part of their family, that we care about one another, that we trust one another, that they know they're getting unbiased fiduciary advice from us. The next is what human capital, which is the team itself that's doing all the work. Again, we're a family business plus one, but but we hired for character and for competence first, and then, but character first, competence second. And then we just feel we have a good fit there. And then, and there's how the world sees us, capital, I guess. And we're not boastful as a company. We do a little bit online. We do a little bit, we have at least we have a website and things like that for people to get to know us. But we're not big networkers. We're not big trying to be everything to everybody. We're very selective on the few clients that we want to take on every year. And we really want to make it, a very special relationship when we bring a client on.
Oh, absolutely. And it has to, like you said, match you also. It's not one-sided, it's definitely two-sided. So I'm going to ask you something that we have not talked about. It is really hard working with your own kids. And there's a joke in my family that my oldest son, Johnny, came to work for us, me, and 3 weeks later, I fired him. And now my two other kids always say, Mom, are you going to fire me too? And because it's tough. What advice do you have that you've learned on managing and working with your own children?
Wow. Well, that's a great question. Well, let me say first and foremost, I think the leader has to have in his mind what the culture needs to be and what it looks like. So when I brought Kim and Eric on board at different times, and then once we were on board together, we sat down and we really talked about a full day offsite, and we just said, what should our culture be? And we came up with 5 core values that we had to agree on. But I will admit they were important to me as we fleshed them out. I didn't have them on paper necessarily, they were kind of in my head. But the first one was to own your 20 square feet or get things done. It's just like, do what you say you're going to do, finish what you start, show up on time, and be polite, say please and thank you. And we said those 4 things, you get things done. If something's handed to you, nobody has to follow up with you. You will get those things done. The second thing that we felt was important was humility. It's important to us as a family, and we felt that I can tell you, in the 4 years that I've been with Eric, we've had exactly 0 fights. Zero, not that we haven't had conflicts, not that we haven't had issues that come up that we need to resolve. We've had 0 anger, 0 fights. And I like to joke when I moved here from New York, which is, I'm not a New Yorker, I'm an Ohio kid. But when I moved here from New York, I used to joke that I had to learn a new language. And, somebody say, what's that language? And I go, once I moved to Portland, I had to learn how to be passive aggressive. So we won't allow that. No passive aggressiveness. There's a humility. Our third core value is integrity. And again, it's family there. I don't have any issues with that. But if we were to bring in yet another outside person, that integrity issue, that do what you say you're going to do, finish what you started, and we know your yes is yes and your no is no, critically important. And then direct and open communication is our fourth. Fifth one might surprise you. It's health and fitness. I've got a family of athletes, and I'm the weakest link when they see some of the things I eat. and said, Dad, you've kind of missed the gym for a few days, so get going. So
Well, and it sounds like you hold each other accountable too.
we do.
That,
Yeah, we do.
to
Absolutely.
make sure that these values are being lived every day, which I think is super important. Yeah, and it's interesting, and I'm sure you've seen it as an entrepreneur, letting go of responsibilities, whether it's to Gen 2, whether it's to an outside person to take over day-to-day operations.
Mhm.
What do you typically see? What's the trends today, how entrepreneurs are exiting?
Well, I would say one of the bad things we see, and this affects their ability to monetize their business and to maximize the sale of their company, if that's what they choose to do, whether partial or full sale, is that they don't have a bench. They do everything. And the question is, can you take 3 months off and your business would still run? Or does every single one of your clients still think they have to talk to you, the the big boss, he or her, right? She or him. And you need to not to delegate, because that's the thing I hate doing, but delegate because that helps you build a business. And we find that there are a couple of things that can really kill the valuation of a company. One is that too much command and control by the owner, whether it's pride, whether it's ironically just a laziness to not take time to train other people to do what they need to do, or a desire that said not a contract gets signed that doesn't have my eyeballs on it first. So we think that's critical. Another is too much customer penetrate concentration rather. It's a successful business. They're making $100 million a year, and 80% of it comes from 3 contracts that could be canceled any day now, right? So those are the kinds of things we think. What we did, Suzanne, in our firm, though, I was influenced. I don't know, some of your listeners might know Dan Sullivan and the Strategic Coach. I started a Strategic Coach in 1997. And one of the concepts of Strategic Coach is something called unique ability, where you say, here are the 3 things that I'm great at, and here are 3 things that I'm horrible at. And then you hire somebody who's great at those 3 things you're horrible at, and probably not that good at the 3 things you're great at. And then, boy, I'll morph that into EOS. So I'm a visionary. My Colby index, I'm a 10 as a quick start, which means I come up with ideas, I make it all up, but I need somebody who follows through to make it real. That's Kim. So Kim, she's my integrator. She's my operation. She's not my anything. She's our operations and our admin. And so I can make it up and Kim can make it real. Eric has more of a Colby that like I do. And so that's how the team is. It's like we know one another's strengths. We don't think it's good to have we don't think it's admirable or noble to have strong weaknesses. Make your strengths even stronger and let somebody else who have strengths where your weaknesses are make their strengths be stronger, and then bring those together. And we have a great team and a great synergy by doing it that way.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. And again, you're speaking kind of my language of, looking at the organization holistically, find the holes and fill those holes. Absolutely. So Bob, you've had, like we shared, this incredible journey, being corporate guy to entrepreneur, all this stuff, hiring family. Looking back out of your long career, what advice would you give your 20-year-old self?
Boy, that's such a great grow up faster, Bob. You were a functional idiot for way too many years. So if I were talking to my 20-year-old self, boy, that's such a great question. I think first of all, I would have them really analyze what wall they want to put their ladder on, right? Do you want to be that corporate guy? Why do you want to be that corporate guy? Do you understand the pluses and the minuses of that? Back when I started, and we're contemporaries. I don't know that we had what color's your parachute that was just trying to tell you what kind of company to get into. It wasn't really entrepreneurism wasn't really a thing like it is now taught in business schools. And I didn't really see an entrepreneurial life for me. But knowing what I know now, that is clearly the path I should have taken from day one. Wish I had. Not that I regret any of the experiences that I had, but I think that would be one thing. And then the other thing that's critical to me, and I know this wasn't really in the questions we were talking about, but my relationship with God. That's something that my confrontation with Christianity, with Jesus, was in college, and it's permeated, and it's my entire life. It's what drives me and why I'm still doing what I'm doing, why I love the interactions I have with people. And we have plenty of people who are of various faiths or even no faith, but it's in my core, and it's why I do what I do. It's why it's just the most important thing to me of everything I do. I'd say it even supersedes family in my business. And so we bring that into every relationship we have, sometimes just quietly, because many of our clients don't feel the same way, which is totally fine. But I don't hide that that's important to me.
Yeah, and it's driving value of yours, obviously, and you're passionate about it. So thank you, Bob, for sharing. And so we always end our podcast on hiring for good. I mean, that's the name of it. So what does hiring for good mean for you?
Well, I can look at it one of two ways, right? Hiring for good could be a staff, but we're a pretty lean staff, right? I've run bigger businesses, obviously in the corporate world, but we're really a family business plus one. So it's really me and three people. So, but when I think of hiring for good, I think of bring as how we bring on clients. And so when we talk to somebody, we want to make sure we want to bring on just a select number of clients, but we want to make sure we can really serve them. And so I have many introductory meetings uh, to see if there's a good fit. And oftentimes it isn't because they're a bad person, I'm a bad person, or there is, but it's just not the right fit for various and sundry reasons. And so when we first get together with people, I make them a couple of promises. Promise number one is the only that I'll ask them a lot of questions, and the only decision they have to make at the end of our first meeting is, do they even want to have a second meeting? That's it. And I will tell them at the end of the first meeting whether I feel that I could really serve them and help them, because that's my intention, is to serve them and make a difference in their lives. And if I feel I can, I'll ask for a second meeting, and they of course can say not for me or yes for me. But I will let them know at the end of the first meeting whether I think we should even have another meeting. And if they agree, then we go on. And if either one of us feels not sure that this is the best fit, so that's the hiring I'm doing, Suzanne, is figure out who should be a part of the Oswego Private Wealth family. And it's a two-way street. I'm not doing it from any um, elevated level. It's peer to peer. It's me and a client, and we just decide together, is this a good fit? Do we both feel that I could be of real help to them? And do I feel that they could be a really great part of our family?
Absolutely. And so it makes me want to ask uh, whether there's a certain time that you get involved with an organization, or maybe I should ask it a different way. Who is your ideal client and when
Uh,
should they reach you?
yeah, well, I believe that exit planning is present tense. I believe that every business should be ready to exit, even if they don't plan for exiting for 20 years. And by business, I mean owner. I mean the owner. And the owner, you don't know. Look at my life. That cancer could have been it. I could have been dead 8 years ago, and we'd never be having this lovely conversation, right? Because that's what I had my cancer. You just don't know. The proverbial get hit by a bus, the C word, my word, cancer, divorce, stuff happens, right? Your health can deteriorate significantly, even if it's slow or which speeds up. So I believe that every business should be ready, exit ready, and that exit planning is present tense, not future tense, and to be ready now. So we love to be referred in to talk to business owners who have successful businesses that are, feel something might be slipping between the cracks. Everything looks great on the outside, but are they fully protected? We want to look at what kind of tax situation do they have? What kind of wealth transfer situation do they have? Do they have the right documents in place? Is the business set up for growth? And I don't believe that's something you do and call it 6 months before you're ready to sign a contract to sell the business. I believe that is a minimum 5 years or 10 years before you ever think about selling the business. And then we'll help you grow too. Did I answer that, by the way,
Uh,
Susan? Did
you
I
sure
just go off
did.
on a tangent?
No, no, I wanted you to answer that because again, as a trusted advisor to Acumen and a referral partner, to let other people know that to reach out to you.
Yeah, I'd say we're looking for nice people who run successful businesses. And we do have a minimum investable value for taking on a new client, which is $2 million. But I will say that if somebody has a significant business, and they might not have $2 million in their checking account or investment account, we will work with that client because we know we can make a difference for the business.
And that's what it's all about, isn't it?
Mhm.
Boy, Bob, I cannot thank you enough for your insights, your sharing of your journey and your story. And I feel like I need to say all of Bob's information is at the bottom of this podcast. But thank you very much for being so honest and candid with me.
Well, thank you, Suzanne. we love you here, and we just thank you so much for having us on your show, or having me on your show. So, yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, Bob.
Okay.
Bob, again, Oswego Wealth Management.
Thanks.